Io is one of the most unique heroes in Dota because he's designed to play entirely around an ally. His tether is what gives him the reputation of not being a hero but a playable buff. Io can latch himself. For the sake of my sanity, I will be referring to Io as a male, to an allied unit, granting them both extra movement speed. And every time Io regenerates health or mana, a portion of it is also transferred to his tethered teammate. Enemies that touch the tether are slowed and take a bit of chip damage. The tether breaks if the ally is too far from Io, and Io can manually break the latch at any moment. Io's second spell is his spirits. He summons 5 spirits that circle around him, damaging enemies that come into contact with them. For League players, think of it like old Asol. Io can also manipulate how far the spirits travel from him to hit further or closer targets as needed. When a spirit touches a non-hero unit, they simply deal a bit of damage and pass through them. When a spirit touches a hero though, it blows up, dealing damage in an AoE. This ability has to be activated and lasts for quite a while, but with an Aghanim Scepter, Io passively spawns spirits around him every second without needing to use the spell. Fun fact, despite being traditionally a support hero, Io actually won the International 2019 as a carry thanks to his Ags. Ana from OG actually went undefeated during that tournament whenever he played his carry Io. Thanks to so many nerfs, the strategy is currently a shell of what it once was, but they'll never take that championship away from him. Overcharge is Io's third spell, and when it's used, it grants a buff for a period of time to both Io and his tethered target. What the buff is depends on his chosen facet. He can either give his tethered target more attack speed and spell damage, or armor or magic resistance. Io can also buy an Aghanim Shard to grant his teammates slow resistance and spell lifesteal during the ability. Relocate is Io's ultimate ability. After a brief delay, Io and his tethered target can teleport anywhere on the map, but they only teleport for 12 seconds and are then forcibly pulled back to their original location. Io can leave his tethered target at the new location if the tether breaks before the return. This ability requires a lot of coordination to use effectively. It's very easy to grief a teammate with a poorly timed relocate. However, when used correctly, it's an incredibly strong response or ganking tool, giving both Io and his teammate global presence, even if temporary. It can also be used as a save. To do this, Io can start the cast to somewhere safe, tether to the target, and teleport them back to safety. Then Io is usually pulled back to his death. Trading your life in exchange for your carries is almost always a good idea. Just remember to break the latch before you TP back. He's kind of like Yuumi from League of Legends because of how his kit works, but instead of being the easiest champion to play in the game, Io is undoubtedly one of the most difficult supports to use because of his tether and relocate shenanigans. I do not recommend playing Io as a new player. He requires so much game knowledge and coordination to pilot effectively, even if he's just, and I say that with quotation marks, a support. For talents, tether damage at 10 is simply more consistent. Tether move speed at 15 is also really nice to have to get you and your tether target zooming. Overcharge regen bonus at 20 unless they're coordinated enough to use relocate effectively. And finally, tether attack at 25. This means that every time your tethered ally attacks a target, you also attack that target automatically. This can create some pretty crazy scenarios, and it's really easily the more fun talent than plus 400 health. Oh, and his innate makes his team take Watchers a bit faster and gives them bonus range. Watchers are these static wards that give his team bonus vision in certain areas of the map. It's a neat passive, but nothing to write home about. Jakiro. If you play Lux or brand support in League because you don't trust your ADC to do damage, you're gonna love Jakiro. Jakiro's title is Twin Head Dragon. His innate means he attacks twice, but each attack deals half damage instead. There's a Fire Head and an Ice Head, and this plays into his facets as well. With your choice of facet, you can change their third skill, choosing between Liquid Fire and Liquid Frost. Both are empowered auto attacks, but Liquid Fire reduces enemy attack speed, deals damage over time in an area around the target, and can burn towers. And Liquid Frost slows movement speed, deals increased impact damage, and amplifies his damage from other spells. Liquid Fire to kill waves and turrets, Liquid Frost for killing people. I prefer the former. Also, both cost no mana, so spam it till your heart's content. He can also buy a shard to make either version of this spell deal % max health damage every second. His Q, Dual Breath, causes Jakiro to shoot out 2 waves of Dragon Breath. First one of ice, then one of fire. The ice wave slows enemies, then the fire wave adds damage over time. This ability is his main damage tool, and it is incredibly powerful in lane and during the early to mid game in general. Ice Path is Jakiro's hard lockdown. Jakiro throws out a line of ice, freezing everyone caught inside and dealing a bit of damage. The AoE is quite long, but it is narrow. That, along with the fact that there's a lot of wind up and a formation delay for the ice, makes it surprisingly challenging skill shot to hit in some cases. Jakiro's ultimate, Macro Pyre, is his version of Rumble's Equalizer from League. It deals massive damage in an area in front of him for quite a while, but enemies can simply walk out until Jakiro buys Aghanim Scepter, causing the spell to deal pure damage instead, increasing its duration and width, as well as creating 2 walls of ice at the edge of the ability to stop people from walking out so easily. Jakiro is an insanely powerful damage dealer support. Few other pause 5s can match the sheer amount of firepower that this hero brings. However, because of their lengthy cast animations and lack of mobility, you guessed it, they can get jumped really easily. Jakiro may be somewhat tankier than other supports, but you'll still die all the same to a Storm Spirit that's right up in your face. The Twin Head Dragon doesn't really have any standout synergies, so anyone that can set up an Ice Path with a stun or something is appreciated. Jakiro loves having a Blink Initiator though, like Magnus or Axe. For talents, the attack range is always better to more safely apply his E, especially since the slow on dual breath is already quite strong. Ice Path cooldown at 15 for increased lockdown potential, Ice Path duration at 20 for even more lockdown potential, and at 25 you can choose between getting either the other Frost Breath attack or dual breath damage in range. If you start with Liquid Frost, I think getting Liquid Fire for pushing in the late game is better, but if you already have Liquid Fire, I'd say just get the dual breath one. A jack of all trades support, Lich can deal damage, protect his teammates, disable enemies, and win a team fight off a single ability. Let's start off with his innate. Lich does not regenerate mana. Instead, he passively gains mana whenever a unit dies near him. It can take some getting used to, but it incentivizes you to be a lot more careful with your mana usage early on. Because you don't gain any benefit from mana regen at all, you'll want to build mana capacity items instead. Frost Blast is Lich's bread and butter ability. It's a point and click nuke that deals damage to the target and in a small area around him. It also applies a slow. Lich can also protect his teammates and himself with Frost Shield, which reduces all damage that a target takes from attacks. Every second, it releases a pulse that deals minor damage and slows nearby opponents. You can use it proactively, slapping it on your frontliner to beef them up, or reactively, using it to defend against divers and would-be assassins. Sinister Gaze is Lich's third ability. Click on an enemy to disable them and force them to approach you, while also draining their mana. It's Lich's lockdown ability and one of the limited ways Lich can gain mana outside of his passive. You can use it on creeps to deal massive damage to them and secure their bounty. Thankfully, this spell doesn't cost too much mana. You can also use your other abilities without breaking the channel. With an Aghanim Scepter, this ability becomes AoE. A budget black hole from a distance on an 18-second cooldown in the late game is a huge threat. Chain Frost is Lich's ultimate and his main team fighting ability. He throws a ball of ice at opponents and it applies a slow and deals damage whenever it bounces around targets. Big damage to grouped up enemies. Lich's facets affect how Chain Frost works. Frostbound causes Chain Frost to linger a bit after it ends, waiting for new targets if they become available to make it even more consistent. Growing Cold extends its duration, as well as Frost Shields whenever Lich gets a takedown with them. I prefer the former. With a Shard, Lich can summon a Pillar of Ice. It slows nearby enemies as long as it exists, and it can serve as a bounce target for Chain Frost. It's good. You should get it often. For talents, Frost Blast radius and damage at 10. An extra 125 extra damage at level 10 is quite powerful. I like Gaze duration at 15 because you may not always have the mana to take advantage of a shorter Frost Blast cooldown, but a longer disable is always good. Frost Shield duration at 20 unless you're dying a lot, which you shouldn't be, and Frost Shield regen at 25 is the safer choice, but only Chain Frost bounces is the more fun one if you have the team comp for it. But if you chose Growing Cold as your facet, always get the Frost Shield regen. Lich loves having enemies clumped up together, so he'll want teammates like Magnus and Darkseer. Lich is insane in a team fight, and as long as you can manage your mana, you'll be able to do it often. Special synergy is with Grimstroke. If you're okay with having two squishy backline mages in your comp, double Chain Frost is game breaking. Thank you so much to this viewer for sharing this tip. As a squishy backline caster, he hates divers just like the rest of them, but now he also really hates mana burners like Anti-Mage, Phantom Lancer, and Lion. Speaking of Lion has a reputation within the community as the support pick for people who don't like to support, and I honestly can't blame them. He has what I believe to be the funniest innate in the game. Lion gets to hell and back, meaning his spells disable for longer and deal more damage for just a minute and a half after he respawns. That means if you want to actually have a passive on Lion, you are incentivized to die, because otherwise you get absolutely nothing. I get that it's supposed to be a boon should you get killed, but from a game design perspective, you're punished for not dying. It's just really funny to me. Maybe you can pull off some insane suicide to neutral creep shenanigans for the buff, but it's just so weird. Anyway, his first skill is a Lion Stun. He shoots some spikes forward, dealing damage and stunning enemies caught in its wake. You can treat it like a point and click stun, but you can actually target it at like a skill shot to increase its effective range. His second skill turns enemies into a harmless frog for a few seconds. It's an instant disable, really good against highly mobile heroes like Queen of Pain and Puck. Mana Drain is a channeled spell where you surprise, drain mana from the target. The enemy can break the drain by either disabling you or moving away. This spell deals no damage unless Lion picks the Essence Eater facet, where he will deal damage equal to the amount of mana drained. He can also buy a shard to affect multiple targets per cast, increase the break distance, and give himself debuff immunity during the channel. In addition to draining mana, it also prevents targets from going invisible, and it instantly kills most illusions. It's a good shard on its own, and a must-have against heroes like Naga Siren and Phantom Lancer. Oh, and he can target teammates to restore their mana too. Lion's ultimate is Finger of Death, aka his outplay button. A point-and-click nuke that deals a ton of damage, but it also has a pretty lengthy cooldown early on. When you use it, it applies a debuff to a target for a few seconds. When the target dies with the debuff active, or if Finger outright kills the target, he permanently increases Finger's damage for the rest of the game. Yes, this stacks infinitely. He can buy Aghanim Scepter to reduce the cooldown and give it an area of effect. It's a huge bait though, please just buy other items like Blink, Force Staff, or Ether Lens instead. He can also choose the Fist of Death facet to turn himself into a melee hero for a bit after using his ultimate. Why would you want that? Because he deals increased damage based on the number of finger stacks he has, and he also applies the finger debuff to enemies, allowing him to gain even more stacks per ultimate usage. This is undoubtedly the more fun one, but the other one is probably better if you want to actually win your games. Oh, and when you're in melee, your attacks cleave for some reason, so you hit everyone around them. Lion is weird. The meme is that he blinks into a fight, uses his full combo, and then trades his life for the enemy. That's because people who don't actually know how to play Lion, or supports in general, will pick Lion because he has stuns and a fun permascaling mechanic. As Lion, you want to play around your finger cooldown. Every time it's up, you want to pair up with someone to get a kill. The more finger kills you get early on, the stronger you'll be later, but you don't want to use it to finish off a low HP target. Otherwise, you're just wasting all that damage. You don't always want to use it as a finisher, but as a way to start a fight. If you can get a kill within 3 seconds of using the finger, you'll still get the stack. In most cases, Lion is never a horrible pick. Having him on your team will mean that you'll always have reliable CC. He's almost entirely an offensive support though, so he's almost always paired with an aggressive early game carry. But he's best against heroes that rely on their insane mobility to stay alive, like Puck and Storm Spirit. For talents, I get Earth Spike damage at 10, Finger health at 15 just to tank up even more, but the Hex cooldown against Puck and Storm Spirit specifically, Earth Spike Cone at 20 for the increased AoE, and AoE Hex at 25 always. This helps Lion initiate on targets that have Lincoln Sphere. We take a break from our squishy backline support heroes to bring you Marci. Marci is a hero that offers a lot of utility and a surprising amount of damage. When she was first introduced, she was played as a core a lot, but now she's mainly played as a support. Her innate makes her team start with flying couriers at the start of the match, and they're harder to kill. That means they move faster and ignore terrain. It's nice to have in the early game, but doesn't make much of an impact outside of that. Her first spell is Dispose. You yeet your target behind you, applying damage and a slow in the area they land. You can target both enemies and allies with this ability. Rebound is her second spell, where she leaps off a teammate and deals damage and stuns in the landing area. The teammate gets a move speed buff for a short period afterwards. Marci can buy Aghanim Shard to decrease the ability's cooldown, bounce off enemies, and also get the move speed buff for herself. Her third spell depends on her chosen facet. She can choose Sidekick to give her and her chosen teammate a buff that grants bonus damage and lifesteal, increased when they're near each other, or Bodyguard, which gives only Marci the bonus lifesteal and damage, but her buff becomes an armor buff to a chosen teammate instead. And when an enemy attacks the buff target, Marci can hit them back as long as they're within her attack range. As a support, Sidekick is just free stats for your carry. Pretty much get this every game. Her ultimate is Unleash, where she attacks in flurries for a short period of time, releasing pulses at the end of every flurry that deal additional damage and also apply a slow. With an Ags, this ability has a shorter cooldown, and when she uses abilities in the Unleashed state, she also releases a pulse. It also makes all pulses apply a silence, as well as dispelling slows and other weaker debuffs from Marci upon casting. Because of this ability, Marci actually ends up becoming some kind of semi-carry as the game goes on, even as a pos 5. Buy Ags, BKB, and Basher, and win every fight you can. Now, I talked about Marci before in my overloaded kits video, but I still think her kit is incredibly overloaded because she does so much, but she's still balanced because her mana is dog water and she's fairly squishy for a melee support. Because of the nature of her kit, she's weak against tanks who can outlast her Unleash, like Axe, or people who can just control her when she dives in ults, like Bane or Shadow Shaman. She's pretty good with almost any carry though, as long as their damage revolves around right clicks. She loves aggressive laning carries that can get kills though, like Ursa. For talents, Rebound Cast Jump at 10 is nice for the quality of life. The lifesteal is good, but I find 25% passively to already be nice. Move speed boost at 15 because by this time, you might have your shard ready, meaning you get 2 teammates running at 50% move speed instead of 1. unleash move speed at 20 to go zoom and not get kited, and at 25, unleash extension if you're out damaging your carry, or sidekick damage if your carry's out damaging you. They're both pretty good choices.
I speak for the trees.
Speaking of heroes that were on my overloaded kits video, we have Nature's Prophet. Now in all honesty, he's viable in every single role, but as a support, Nature's Prophet just plays like a bitch. He teleports around the map, steals wisdom runes, and snipes couriers. I hate playing against NP support, especially if he's good. Anyway, let's get into his kit. Sprout is Prophet's pseudo CC tool. He summons a ring of trees in an area or around an enemy. It also provides vision. When cast on an opponent, it deals damage. It's a pseudo CC tool because enemies can get out with items or spells, but if they don't have them, they're effectively locked in place. He can choose a facet that causes Sprout to heal teammates when used on them, but the main thing is that it can be used to heal towers. For his second ability, he can teleport around the map, anywhere, anytime. Once he finishes the teleport, he gains a barrier. You can't be too sneaky with the spell though, since enemies can see where you're casting it. In high level games, you'll see Prophets use this ability to make key plays, like stealing runes, making ganks, and killing couriers. Global presence with almost no limits is not a joke. His third ability has him convert trees in an area into controllable treants. These are units that deal a bit of damage, but they're mostly used for taking towers. Prophet can take a facet to make one big treant with better stats instead. For his innate, Prophet gets bonus damage when he's near trees or treants. The more of them, the better. His ultimate is a nuke that bounces between targets, gaining increased damage per target hit and has global range. It's nice for stealing farm from your teammates, but you also want to hold it to stop pushes or finish off low HP enemies. By getting an Aghanim Scepter, this ability's cooldown is reduced, and it also snares all targets hit. For Prophet's Shard, he gets Curse of the Old Growth. This spell grants vision over targets near Prophet and deals damage and slows them, and is stronger the more trees there are around an enemy. It's honestly decent, but you'd want to get other items instead. Prophet is an insanely flexible hero and has a ton of viable playstyles. He can build like a pusher, assassin, or a stacker, or typical support. If you know how to use him, he's never really a bad pick, especially early on in the draft, since enemies won't know what role he really is. Teleport is his most powerful ability, but Sprout gives him the most options for synergy. It's a lockdown spell, so you can combo with heroes that need an enemy to hold still, like Skywrath Mage, but there are heroes that synergize with his trees. Prophet Windranger and Prophet Hoodwink are pretty much guaranteed stuns and are insanely nasty combos. He hates huge burst heroes because he has very little survivability built into his base kit, but heroes that can catch him as he teleports, like Spirit Breaker or Spectre, are the banes of his existence. For talents, it depends on what kind of Prophet you're playing. Always get the Treant talents if you're playing around pushing and the enemy has no way of dealing with them. Get the others otherwise. Though I will say Sprout Leash at 20 is a must pick. 160 damage at level 20 is nothing, and Sprout Leash at least can cancel TPs. Trent stats at 25 is better if you're playing around split pushing, otherwise no TP cooldown is just so powerful. I will say though that if you're a new player, I recommend that you hold off on picking Prophet. Despite the relative simplicity of his kit, because of how unfocused he is, it's better when used by players that already have a good foundation in terms of game knowledge. To pilot him effectively, you need to understand map timings, ganks, when to push, and when to not.
Ogre Magi!
By far the easiest hero in Dota 2 to play. Ogre is a stupid hero. No, I mean it. He literally cannot gain intelligence ever. It is a dead stat on him. His innate means he gets mana and mana regeneration from his strength attribute. His first spell is Fire Blast. It is a point and click stun that deals damage. His second spell is Ignite. It is a point and click debuff that slows and damages over time. His third skill is Bloodlust. It is a point and click buff that grants attack speed and move speed. He gets more attack speed if he uses it on himself though. His shard gives him Fire Shield. It's a point and click shield that blocks the most of the damage from 3 attacks, dealing damage to the attacker. His Axe gives him Unrefined Fire Blast. Guess what? It's a point and click stun, but it deals damage based on Ogre's strength and costs his current mana. His kit is so simple, so what makes it even worth playing? The answer is gambling. His ultimate is multicast, meaning that he has a chance to cast each of his spells multiple times. That means he can hit a single target with up to 4 Fire Blasts in a row, if you're lucky. It also works with items that target opponents. For example, Hand of Midas. This is an item that can convert a single creep into gold every 90 seconds. Ogre Magi has a chance to kill multiple creeps every time he uses it, for maximum gambling addiction. He can choose the Fat Chance facet to increase his multicast chance based on his strength, or he can choose Learning Curve, reducing the required levels he needs for spells and talents by 1 and giving him 3 skill points at level 2 at the cost of starting the game with no skill point at all. The latter is by far more interesting, but Fat Chance is better if you're planning some level 1 shenanigans at the Ruin spawn. I get Learning Curve though, because funny. For talents, Ignite DPS at 9, Mana Stats at 14 for more spam, Bloodlust attack speed at 19 to be a better support, and finally, Fire Blast damage at 24. But I will talk about Fire Blast chance. The answer is yes, it can multicast. Let me tell you that you have not fully enjoyed a game of Dota until you build Carry Ogre and build around getting this talent. It's not practical at all, but it doesn't matter. Your enemies will be permastunned. Ogre Magi is a perfect representation of what Dota is. Crazy, unpredictable, polarizing, and all in all, incredibly fun. Somehow, he just works.
Omniknight.
Despite his holy theme, Omniknight is kind of in limbo. He's not a particularly dominant core, but people insist on playing him offlane. I can't deny the numbers though. Omni support is the way to go. Omni's innate is degen aura. Enemies around him are slowed, and with his omnipresent talent, he deals increased damage against enemies based on how long they're within his aura. His first skill heals a single target and deals pure damage to enemies around it. Repel makes a target ally or Omni himself debuff immune. If a target already has debuffs on them, Repel gives extra strength and health regen. With a shard, repelled targets will also get magic resistance. This is a busted ability. Debuff immunity in Dota is game changing, and normally people have to spend 4,000 gold to get it. Omni gets it with a basic ability and on a 30-second cooldown. A mistake that a lot of players make is that many carries think Omni's repel is a BKB replacement. It is not, because it's too inconsistent and reliant entirely on Omni being in position. Having a BKB in addition to his repel is the real game winner. A minimum of 12 seconds of debuff immunity combined is longer than some ultimates and enough to win a team fight on its own. Hammer of Purity is a spell that deals pure damage based on Omni's base damage. For the experienced players watching this, it's a unique spell in the sense that to cast it, you have to hit an enemy with an auto attack. It's not unempowered auto attack itself because the damage instance is separate, but it's not your typical spell because it doesn't benefit from cast range bonuses. Anyway, just smack people with this ability whenever you can. Omni's Healing Hammer facet gives him a bit of extra healing when damaging an enemy hero with his spells. Honestly, get this one. It makes your trades much better. Guardian Angel is Omni's ultimate. It makes a target allied hero completely immune to physical damage. It gets 2 charges, and if you get Ags, you gain a 3rd charge, and you can cast it globally. Ags also causes Omni to benefit from GA as well. It's a powerful ability that can nullify an enemy carry, unless they get nullifier to dispel it. For talents, Purification cooldown at 10 for more heals, GA charge restore time at 15 for more peels, repel duration at 20 is insanely busted, and Purification damage heal at 25. Omniknight, when played as a support, is a powerful enchanter giving heals and physical damage invulnerability in addition to debuff immunity. However, that's all he is. You play entirely around enabling your carry. If they're good, you make them better, but if they're bad, you're fucked. But you're also a really strong laner, despite being a melee hero. Between Purification, Hammer of Purity, and your Healing Hammer facet, you will trade very well because of how much healing you'll be getting while still dealing respectable damage. He lacks hard CC and catch, but if your teammate already has that, then you're fine. You really want to pair Omni with a melee carry to make the most out of his Purification AoE and Repel. Ursa Omni and PA Omni are some really good pairings. He's countered by silences, dispels, anti-heal, and stupid teammates.
Oracle.
Another enchanter support, Oracle is a huge team player that can sometimes outdamage his own carry. For his innate, Oracle will predict where power runes will spawn. This immediately makes you every mid laner's best friend. For his facets, Oracle can choose between dealing or healing more damage based on his level. His first spell has 3 effects. After a brief channel, Oracle sends out a projectile that deals damage and roots for a duration based on the length of the channel. It also dispels buffs. These effects splash in an area around the target upon landing. You can actually use this on teammates to dispel debuffs on them as well, and they also still apply the damage and root in the area, but not to the teammate. Fate's Edict changes depending on whether it's used on a friend or a foe. When used on an enemy, it disarms them. When used on an ally, it grants them complete resistance to magic damage. Oracle's third ability is Purifying Flames. First, it nukes a target dealing heavy magic damage, but then it applies a healing buff that adds up to more healing than damage dealt. You can use it on allies or enemies, and either way, it'll deal both the heal and damage. If you're gonna use it on an ally, give them Fate's Edict first so that they only get healed. If you're gonna use it on an enemy, you actually want to channel your Q and then break the channel with a cast of Purifying Flames, like I do in this clip. This makes it so that your Fortune's End will dispel the heal from your E before it starts to kick in, maximizing damage dealt. With this combo, Oracle can deal absurd amounts of damage. His ultimate, False Promise, on the surface prevents an ally from dying. However, what it actually does is that it keeps a hero's HP bar in stasis. They do not gain or lose HP for the spell's duration. This is really good for heroes that want to stay low on HP to get the most out of their kit, namely Huskar. However, all damage and healing they take is applied at the end of the duration. It's important to note that all healing is amplified though. It also applies a strong dispel on cast, cleansing stuns and other stuff. Oracle can also buy an Aghanim Scepter to give the False Promise target invisibility and more DPS. With Shard, Oracle gets Reign of Destiny, creating an area where enemies are damaged and heal for less, and teammates are healed and gain amplified healing. For talents, I tend to get False Promise Armor for saves at 10, Purifying Flames cooldown at 15, False Promise cooldown at 20, and False Promise duration at 25. Oracle's ultimate is absolutely insane. Against the right heroes, it can completely nullify their bread and butter ability. Isn't that right, Batrider? It is the best save in the game because of how much it does, so you don't want to waste it or hold it for too long. But an underrated aspect to Oracle is actually his laning. With your QE combo, you deal a lot of damage. Purifying Flames is also insane for securing ranged creeps, and Fate's Edict is great for being a bitch and denying. As another squishy backline caster, Oracle hates fighting divers. Oracle loves having divers though. His best teammates are the ones that jump right into the fray and would love the added help of staying alive, namely Huskar and Phantom Assassin. This guy's main gimmick is trading his health for big damage and utility with one of the most iconic teamfighting ultimates in the game. His innate makes all of his spells apply a debuff to enemies, partially blinding and causing them to miss their attacks. This ability stacks and each new stack refreshes the duration. Icarus Dive is Phoenix's mobility spell. He flies forward in a fixed arc before diving back like a boomerang. Phoenix can cancel the dive by using it again though. Enemies Phoenix hit during the dive take damage over time and are slowed. Fire Spirits are Phoenix's main damage dealing tool. He summons 4 spirits to levitate around him and can throw each one individually to apply a damage over time debuff and attack speed slow. This doesn't stack though, so you'll want to space them out instead of blowing your load all at once. Sunray is his third skill. Phoenix fires a laser beam from his person, dealing damage to enemies and healing allies caught in its wake. Phoenix's hotspot facet makes the beam deal more damage to targets near the end of the laser. Phoenix's other facet, Dying Light, is kind of like a second Donate though, causing nearby foes to take damage based on his missing health. I prefer Hotspot though, mainly because there's no way to turn this ability off and it kinda just fucks up the wave in the early game. Phoenix's ult is what makes him such a good team fighter. With Supernova, he turns into an egg. In this state, Phoenix cannot move and deals damage over time to all enemies around him for 6 seconds. Enemies can try and kill the egg with a number of successful attacks, killing Phoenix. But if they are unable to, Phoenix is reborn with full health and mana and refreshed cooldowns on his abilities, as well as applying a stun to all nearby enemies. It's an insanely powerful teamfighting ultimate, effectively giving Phoenix a second life and a teamfight spell in a single ability. Phoenix can buy a shard to be able to use his Sunray while in egg form, which will also slow targets, and an Aghanim Scepter to increase the hit counter and potentially use it on a teammate, granting them the same healing and ability refresh if successful, or enemies can kill the egg and the teammate with it. For talents, Dive Slow at 10, Spirit Damage at 15 for more DPS, Supernova Stun Duration at 20, only if you can consistently get it off, if not get the Sunray damage, and hit count at 25. Though, the dive range is much more fun. Your standard combo as Phoenix is to laser from a distance, then swoop in with your Icarus Dive, throwing Fire Spirits at enemies to reduce their attack speed, and then going Supernova. To get the most value out of your ultimate, you'll want to use all of your abilities before popping it. Phoenix loves teammates who have ways of protecting the egg before it explodes. A special shout out goes to Mars though. His arena prevents enemies from outside the egg from attacking it since it blocks all attacks from the opposite side. Mars can trap the heroes inside the arena, while Phoenix pops egg outside and then blows it up, usually resulting in a one-team fight. For counters, avoid picking him into comps that have a lot of attack speed or ranged right clickers. Sniper, Drow, Clinks are all prime examples, but you really don't want to play against Snapfire. And that's it for part 2. Leave a like if you learned something, leave a comment if you want to say something, and subscribe if you haven't already because there's a lot more to come. Be sure to check out the previous video if you haven't already, and all my other content too. Stay tuned for next week's episodes where we will be tackling even more. That's all for now. Ace out.